whatever it may be. Who the hell knows? It could be intellectual property rights. I don't know, don't care. The point being is, I think there's a chance that Ethereum can have a larger market cap than Bitcoin. That's when I say ETH equals Bitcoin, is because when you think of it in macro terms, they're both really network effects. So I started at 80-20. The Ethereum's gone up a lot more already. And then I allocated more. So I'm like 60-35. And then I went further out the risk curve and I bought a basket of alts as well. It's that moment when you have the light bulb moment is, you know, okay, there's a time to stand up and be counted. This is your opportunity. Now, could I be wrong? Of course. But this looked to me like the best single macro opportunity I'd seen in my entire life. And, you know, I've seen a few good ones. You know, I had a great one with a bond trade, you know, last year and early into this year and stuff like that. But this is better than that. This is a once in a lifetime bet. There's a hunch that I have, and it's only a hunch, hence why it's a much smaller position. There's a hunch that from all of my conversations around this whole space, that there is a massive amount of human intellectual capital working in that particular space, because there's the flexibility of how Ethereum is based. And there's a load of flaws, like there's flaws about everything. So, you know, I'm not saying it's a perfect world. I also don't think of Bitcoin and Ethereum as the same thing. Bitcoin to me is this pristine collateral. It's, you know, it's perfect. I don't need, now whether everybody builds the Lightning layer and all the other stuff on top, great. I own tons of Bitcoin, but I see the amount of intellectual capital that's going into the Ethereum space. And I'm thinking, there's a chance that something really, really big comes out of this. And so I think of it as a platform. And it's a very crude way of looking at it. But if I see a lot of people all building on one platform, then the probability of one of those bets paying off huge, let's say DeFi ends up being on there and it becomes a real thing, whatever it may be. Who the hell knows? It could be intellectual property rights. I don't know, don't care. The point being is, I think there's a chance that Ethereum can have a larger market cap than Bitcoin. And that doesn't make it a better currency or a better investment. It's because by the nature of a platform versus an asset.
You briefly mentioned there, you're looking at Ethereum. You were weighted 80-20 BTC to Ethereum. And are you expecting that to change in 2021?
Yeah, I'm hoping to add to Ethereum soon. And I will probably continue to add to that, because if I look at the chart of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, it looks like it's basing. Usually Ethereum is also very much following the 2017 Bitcoin cycle, both in price, in number of wallet addresses, in market cap. I mean, it's identical. It's kind of spooky, which tells you this is being driven by Metcalfe's law and adoption effects than almost anything else. So if that's the case, then we know Ethereum has a decent chance of getting to 20,000, considering right now it's at 11,800. Oh, sorry, 1,180.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit. That's a value proposition. Even with Bitcoin going to 200,000 to 300,000, one's 8x, one's 16x from here.
Raoul, in January, you tweeted, ETH equals BTC, like it or not. What do you mean by that, and how did you come to that conclusion?
You know, again, I'm a macro guy, so I don't have the engineering background that Lynn has, but how I approach this is I look at the attributes of how it trades as an asset. And what I did is I looked at estimations of network effects and said, well, do they look similar? And when you plot out Bitcoin's journey, its market cap or its price versus the number of active wallets, actually there's a nice clear regression line. And it happens after a certain period of time. So it gets to about 5 million wallets, and then it goes in a very clear, steep line, which is essentially an estimation of Metcalfe's law. And I found that Ethereum was exactly mirroring Bitcoin. When I say exactly, when I look at it on a plot graph with the same regression, it looks similar, but because it started later, it just follows Bitcoin earlier. But in fact, its adoption, i.e. the number of wallets at this time, is actually a faster rate of adoption than Bitcoin had. But what's super interesting is when you go back and match them from 1 million active wallet addresses each, their prices are identical and their price movements have been identical. And that took me by surprise. I didn't expect to see that because that normally doesn't happen. You have to fit the graphs, but it perfectly fit in every way. It's exactly currently in the 2017 run-up that Bitcoin had. And at exactly the same time, after it hit 1 million wallets, it gives you something similar. So that's when I say ETH equals Bitcoin, is because when you think of it in macro terms, they're both really network effects. And so they may have very different properties. There may be different things entirely. And people struggle with value when it comes to network effects. Almost everybody underestimates value by definition, because we try and anchor it on something that we perceive as value. But network effects are so hard to think in because they're exponential. So I started at 80-20. The Ethereum's gone up a lot more already. And then I allocated more. So I'm like 60-35. And then I went further out the risk curve and I bought a basket of alts as well. Equally weighted.
Which ones?
Well, I'm not going to say because because I don't want to make it like I'm pumping anything, because the alts world is a little bit wild and crazy. So I didn't want to do that. But basically what I took was I just looked at ones that looked like they were getting network effects. I asked people on Twitter. I got 6,500 responses. So I could figure out, okay, what looks like they've got network effect here. I look at the charts, and as long as they're a reasonable sized market cap, I just took an equally weighted basket because I've no clue and I just don't have time to understand these in the depth that, we've all had to learn Bitcoin in, and we're all having to get up to speed with Ethereum in. So I did that because I know in the end, everybody does what I've done, which is they go further out the risk curve. They do it in emerging markets.
You briefly mentioned there, you're looking at Ethereum. You were weighted 80-20 BTC to Ethereum. And are you expecting that to change in 2021?
Yeah, I'm hoping to add to Ethereum soon, and I will probably continue to add to that because if I look at the chart of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, it looks like it's facing. Usually, Ethereum is also very much following the 2017 Bitcoin cycle, both in price, in number of wallet addresses, in market cap. I mean, it's identical. It's kind of spooky, which tells you this is being driven by Metcalfe's law and adoption effects than almost anything else. So if that's the case, then we know Ethereum has a decent chance of getting to 20,000, considering right now it's at 11,800. 1,180.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a value proposition. Even with Bitcoin going to 200,000 to 300,000, one's 8x, one's 16x from here. But compared to prior cycles, it should go a lot further. But all prior cycles have multiple 40%, 30% corrections.
Yes.
I think it probably goes higher before we get the correction. So Bitcoin might get a 50,000. There's even an outside chance that we go up to 100,000 by mid-Feb and then correct 40%. I don't know. My way of playing that is I'm all in. I'm not expecting to close any positions until the end of the year, maybe into next year. So I will just, if I get any more cash, I will just buy a dip. And I'll be tilting it more towards Ethereum than Bitcoin. I'm currently 80-20. Add to Ethereum because I think it's going to outperform in this cycle.
Today we have Tyler Winklevoss on the show, the co-founder of Gemini. And with Ether, I know it's not as talked about in the media, but when it comes to the predictions of where Ether can go and how it's utilized and where it could be from a price perspective, like what's your thoughts on that, on where Ether could go from a place of value?
So I think it's very high. In some ways, I haven't done like math on that lately. So for disclosure, and we've talked about this before, that we have material stake in Ether as well. Like you mentioned earlier, the media loves Bitcoin because it's easier for consumers or readers to understand that, and they harp on that, and that makes sense. But what's less talked about and less known is that we are huge fans of Ether, or Ethereans, if you will, in the slang. So look, I think Ether has tremendous capabilities because Bitcoin's digital gold, right? It's sort of moving value from A to B, and there doesn't seem to be a huge appetite in the community to experiment or sort of screw it up, right? It's like, we've got a good thing going. Let's not run too fast. Let's not be too exotic. Whereas Ethereum is like it's a decentralized operating system. So the promise is that you can create these applications on top of it, permissionless. The same way you could build an application, I don't know about anymore, but back in the day, you could build a company on top of Facebook. So companies like Zynga, which actually IPO'd and was worth, I think, at least $1 billion, was a company built on top of Facebook. So most companies today are built on top of a cloud computing service like Amazon. So you rent space from Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Ethereum is a decentralized Amazon where you can build your applications there, and you run the computing power by owning Ether. Instead of running your credit card through Amazon Cloud, AWS Web Services, you just pay the network in Ether. It's not centralized. It's not a company. It's a decentralized network, and you can you could create decentralized Twitter on it. You could create decentralized Facebook, decentralized whatever. No one can stop it. No one really controls it. It's owned by the users. That's the beauty of cryptocurrency, is that the value accrues to the people who use the network, not just a few people in a company in Silicon Valley. So, Ether's got to upgrade. It's moving to ETH2. There's some scalable things that it's got to work through. But like, I'm an optimist, and the smartest folks in the room are working on it. So if Ether is your global computer in the future, what's that worth? It's got to be a ton, and it's got to be worth as much as digital gold, I would think, maybe more. Or it's sort of like owning a piece of the racetrack without having to bet on which horse is going to win. As long as the races are running, you make some money. And so Ether is the same thing for indexing a piece of the Ethereum network, which is a digital or decentralized global computer. A lot of people equate Ether to digital oil. So if you want to get into the crypto game, my suggestion is own some Bitcoin, digital gold, and own some Ether, digital oil. And with those, you have most of your bases covered.